You're listening to Big World Network.
Adeline in an Adventure with Wizards, Season 3, Episode 1. Written and read by Lucy Bell. Odd occurrences were not unusual in the royal kingdom. The Academy of Alchemy and Science existed upon that sole principle. A violet that bloomed only on a blood moon and caused those that breathed its pollen to float 2 feet 3 inches off the ground was no more unusual than a pig with webbed wings. These were, after all, the natural order for the world. Rare, perhaps, but not impossible, not magical. Adeline liked to think all things could be rationalized. Frogs raining from the sky were no more than victims of an unfortunate waterspout. Fire erupting from the cracked cobblestones meant the core's pressure had built too high. But this was overwhelming, even for her. It was one thing for locals to claim to see ghosts. It was entirely another for the sun to remain fixed in a single spot for what seemed to have been days and nights on end. The lack of proper sleep began to show on Adeline's appearance. Her usual prim bun sprung out on all sides. She half expected a finch to fly into it and roost at any moment. Her dress collar showed 2 buttons undone, so that the delicate curve of her collarbone shied out to all the world. The tips of her hair were more frayed than her nerves. If she had to resort one more aisle of books, for the umpteenth time she might add, she would scream. One of those blood-curdling, nails-on-a-chalkboard type of screams, dainty appearance besawed. "Oh, heavens," Went lamented, leaning hunched into the bookshelf as if his spine could no longer carry the full extent of his height. "What day do you suppose we're at now, Addie?" Adeline paused in her sorting. Piles of books stacked around where she sat, making a convincing tower. By her counts, they were on day 6, though her pocket watch had stopped ticking sometime around 12 the first day. "Addie," Went whined, and slid down to the floor, legs ahead of him like stilts. 6 days, mayhaps? 7 if we're dreadfully unfortunate. Her nerves were unwinding like a centuries-old clock. She found herself unable to muster any outrage at Wentworth's particular pet name. Perhaps if she believed in magic, or the supernatural, she'd be more prone to make outlandish guesses at the cause of their predicament, but no. There was no point in her musing on the nature of her beliefs. She would not indulge in any flights of fancy, at least not outside of any book. "I would swear to you," Adeline sighed, as she placed another volume upon the shelf, "that I have reshelved." She turned the spine so that she could read the title, "Genevieve's Travels, Edition 2, 20 times in the past days." Went grinned wickedly at Adeline. Even though his hair sat half-mussed, half-limp around his head, he still managed to compose a characteristic smile. Sometimes Adeline thought she loathed him more than he deserved. This was not one of those times. "Strange, isn't it?" he began, leaning into the shelf so that it swayed backwards, "that every hour or so the books decide to reorder themselves." He waggled his eyebrows. A thin sheen of sweat dusted the top of his brow. Adeline refused to take the bait. "Clearly a trickster, a troublesome child, perhaps, has taken it upon himself to play a prank on hard-working royal librarians." Adeline fixed Went with a pointed stare. He grinned in return. They both knew her accusation rang hollow. Went spent just as much effort as Adeline reshelving the library. He was not the root of this Sisyphean task. "No, I'm wounded, you think me a child," Went feigned hurt, clutching his hands to his heart. "I see you find no objection to trickster," Adeline jabbed. The jab depleted what remained of her energy. She hoped Went did not go for a verbal parry, or she would have to admit defeat. All the stacking and restacking took its toll. The sunlight glared through the library, through the castle, throughout the entire kingdom, with no reprieve in sight. No blinds could hinder the ferocity of the glare, highlighting even the darkest cupboard in a fiery red glow. Adeline, like many others, attempted to find relief in the dingiest, disreputable cellar taverns and bars throughout the city, to no avail. Despite being buried under cool, dank earth, the light fought brilliantly down through fireplaces, chimney spokes, and oven vents, as if intent on keeping the denizens of the kingdom awake at any cost. Surely Adeline had read somewhere that sleep deprivation led to tension, raised cholesterol, and death. As yet another book slid into its dewy decimalized place, the doors to the Royal Library burst open with the heavy clatter of rushed importance. Most people took care to slip into the library. Those who were in a rush, on the other hand, allowed all sorts of banging to occur. Quick and determined footfalls followed the slamming of the library door, until a long, dark shadow fell across the warm tile where Adeline sat. Adeline peered up from the spotless black leather shoes to the dark-robed form of the royal emissary. Though her face remained obscured in backlight, the body that stood before Adeline could belong to none other than Rutherford. "Miss Waybridge," Rutherford enunciated with a drawl and a sneer, "you have been summoned." Had Adeline any energy left, she may have been shocked. However, she found bemusement her only emotion. Had a week passed? Couldn't be. Adeline had a performance review days from now. If not, she would not have ventured into work this very morning. She would have shuttered her windows, crawled under a stifling amount of comforters, and hid. At the round age of 3 Adeline had outstayed her heroic welcome. All women at 30 were required to step out of the spotlight and take up the mantle of the noblest task, making and raising more women such as themselves. Though Adeline's 30th celebration had yet to pass, the pressure of it stomped upon her shoulders like a circus elephant. Despite her best attempts to forestall the inevitable had come for her. No more hiding out in the library, escaping the cold realities of the outside world. Adeline only hoped the end was not permanent. Regal as ever, the Queen sat in her chair the way a lion would lay across a rock, as comfortable in her immense power as ever. Though her back remained ramrod straight, her gray gaze lounged. Her muscles relaxed into the woodwork of her throne, and a contented smile sprawled across her face. One wouldn't think the entire kingdom were in turmoil to look at her. "Ah, Miss Waybridge, so good of you to join us," the Queen remarked, waving Adeline in from the door. One did not keep the Queen waiting, not even Adeline. She stepped forward, aware of how much she was the quarry, and the Queen the predator. Come now, the Queen urged. "We haven't the time for dallying. I have an imperative mission for you." Adeline stopped before the marble stone steps of the throne. "Mission," she parroted. "Then this isn't about my review." "Good heavens, child! Why would this be about your review? Certainly you've noticed the pressing problem with the sun refusing to set?" Adeline frowned. Though relief flickered in her that her review was yet postponed, she hadn't the faintest how she could help with the sun problem. She was merely the royal librarian. And if there were a text hidden in the library, Adeline should have found it by now. After all her stacking and restacking, the idea had crossed her mind. Perhaps the solution lay in one of the innumerous book collections. Days of searching had turned up nothing. She'd scoured the catalogue in between stacking. Nearly all books, to her knowledge, were accounted for. "I fail to see how I can be of assistance," Adeline replied, dipping her head in a low bow. "Well, I suppose you wouldn't," the Queen admitted, causing Adeline to glance up towards the Queen. "But I intend to correct that, starting now." The Queen paused for dramatic effect. Adeline and her heart did not appreciate the move. "You see, Miss Waybridge, the Secret Wizard Society believes one of their magical tomes has been misplaced." At magic, Adeline snapped upright, her gaze level with the Queen's formidable chin. Surely the Queen wasn't playing at another one of her schemes. Adeline didn't need any more adventure in her life. She'd grown quite tired of the two she'd had. Her library was the only place she wanted to be. "Magic? Wizards? Your Majesty, I must protest," Adeline protested. A smile curled above the chin, long, wide, and displaying a fine set of milky white teeth. Adeline felt as if she were about to be devoured. "Of course you must, but I won't allow you to protest any further. We haven't the time for you to go over your grievances with the concept. The short of it is, Miss Waybridge, some young wizard apprentice misplaced her grimoire. She believes it to be hiding somewhere in the library. She also believes it to be the source of our problems. That's a fair amount of belief in something that doesn't exist, Adeline interrupted, by now in a dark, frowning competition with the Queen's chin. The chin seemed to be winning. The chin jutted out as another smile stretched taut on the Queen's lips. Yes, I understand your confusion, and had we more time, I would personally see to it you received a grand tour of the Invisible University. Alas, the crops are catching fire. Our water reserves are drying up. Cows and horses refuse to get up and out of their barns, and not a single creature in this green kingdom can sleep. Miss Waybridge, if we do not act with the appropriate urgency the situation requires, we will have an uprising on our hands, and we can't have that. I'm not asking you to accept that there are wizards in this kingdom who attend a hidden university and practice secret magical feats. I am demanding, as your queen, that you get over whatever quibbles you have, accept my word as law, and assist our young wizard friend in retrieving the grimoire. The Queen's chin quivered under the force of her powerful voice. Yes, Adeline conceded, she was indeed losing to the Queen's formidable chin, and formidable everything else.
You're listening to Big World Network.